Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk to you about a story that I wrote, and it honestly, it, to me, it really shows how much forgiveness can extend, even if someone has done something so bad to you that anyone else would say they don't deserve it. They don't deserve to be forgiven. But I feel like the story that I wrote, I'll just kind of help that. But first I want to talk to you guys is about the main character. The main character, I named him David Meneses. David, after my favorite musician, who's helped me through a lot spiritually, and I am grateful to him for that. David Kushner. I named my character David, and then my character's last name is Meneses. The reason I chose that last name is because there's a doctor who worked on me when I was a baby. His name was Dr. Meneses, and he performed the surgery that had saved my life. But back to my character. David Meneses is 24 years old, and he lives in Des Moines, Iowa, with his best friend Evan Rodriguez. I chose that name because I know two people named Evan and who are my friends, and I know two people with the last name Rodriguez who are also my friends. David's mother is named Michelle. I named her after a very good friend of mine. David's father I named Connor. I just didn't really have any other good idea, and that name just popped into my head. Connor is the name of a teacher that I had a while back. David's sister is named Crystal. I got that name from the Rookie TV show that I watched because one of the characters, one of her aliases for going undercover is Crystal. And besides that, David has from a young age he always wanted to help people because he just saw how bad everything was in his community. He and his family, he actually in the story live here in Des Moines. But after something really bad happened to David, and he had to move in with his best friend Evan. And I'll get more into that now that I've just covered at least a few things. I mean, other than everything that I've listed, David likes music, which will come in handy during the story. He likes fencing, which plays a vital role in it. Well, not vital, but still kind of important. He doesn't like math, which I personally don't like either. And he also doesn't like people yelling at him, which I also do not like. So I kind of put bits and pieces of me in David. So my story begins with the introduction to David, but I have kind of introduced him to you guys already. He talks about having a dream of starting his own philanthropy foundation, and I also do as well. He wanted to do it because he realized after listening to his two favorite music artists, Shawn Mendes and David Kushner, who are also my favorites. And as I said, David's basically me. Shawn's music helped him realize that the music that Shawn made had always helped people with their anxiety, whether that just be about something small or about something big. David's music helped people who are just spiritually lost, since David's music is mainly a Christian music. And I wrote it so that David actually feels at home listening to these two, and with David especially, because both his parents, both his family and Evan's family are both Christian families. So listening to that music really does help both of them. David uses his connections in the music industry and as a philanthropist to raise awareness for mental health, especially after what he's been through with Crystal. Well, because as that experience, as all of those years with Crystal made him realize that a lot of people go through so much, but they don't talk about it because they're afraid. So to give a little age range, David is 24, Crystal is 20, and Evan is 22. I don't really have many ages for most of the characters, but there will be a character later on and that I don't really specify his age, but I'll say he looks around the age of David. So this whole story started because his Crystal, David's sister, I never really go into detail in the story about it, but I feel like she is just always jealous of him in a way. Not just because he's the oldest and gets like all the attention, but just because he's a lot more successful than her. But the thing is, David never really uses that as like a show of power here, because all he wants to do is help people. That's his only goal, is to help people. He doesn't care that he's popular or anything. And Crystal's jealousy leads her to try and kill David at least twice. The first time he tries to kill her, he tries to kill him. She stabs him in the back with a kitchen knife. Their father, Connor, sees that immediately and wrestles Crystal to the ground. Michelle then calls the police and the paramedics. The police arrive, arrest Crystal, while the paramedics tend to David. And there's one detail that I never really address in this story that I like just came up with. While Crystal was being taken to the car in handcuffs, she manages to discreetly swipe the key for one of the officers, and when she's in the car, she uses the key to unlock the cuffs, and she keeps the cuffs elevated on her wrist to make it look like they're still on. And when the officers get her out, she drops the cuffs, assaults both of them, and runs. She's then on the run for a few months. She stays with her best friend, Peyton and Sanchez. I chose that name because like I know at least a few people named Peyton, and I know like a fictional character named Sanchez. And as you can see, like many of these characters, I didn't really think of them on the fly. I just thought like, what would be good names for these characters? Because people who I know in real life, and then also fictional characters, because let's be honest, I don't really have that many ideas. So after Crystal goes to Peyton's house, she stays there for a while. In the story, I never really specify how long, but the story, it takes place over a few months. So I would think she stayed at least a few days until Peyton found out about what she did. And by that time, Crystal was already gone. And after she left, Crystal put her plan into motion, and of coercing David to go somewhere, so she could test him. She coerced him by threatening Evan. And by the end of the story, Evan and Crystal come face to face. Sorry, David and Crystal come face to face. I think I said Evan. So David and Crystal come face to face. David had sees through who like a window that's close by that Crystal's hiding around in a corner with a sword in her hand. So that, and he quietly sneaks in, finds a sword, and slowly approaches, and Crystal comes out attacking him. David, of course, comes out on top, and he thinks to himself, do I really want to lash out at her for everything she's done, because that's basically what she's been doing all these years, is taking her anger with herself, the world, whatever, out on him. So, and I mean, even if David did kill her, it would have been in self-defense, because as he was falsely imprisoned, because when David came in the door, Crystal locked it. It's so he couldn't leave. So in the and he finds his Crystal to a chair, finds a working phone, and calls the cops. And an officer arrived. Here's Officer Jack West. David tells Officer West everything. He then goes outside to see that Evan and his parents are there waiting for him. And also an ambulance just to check on David and to see if he has any injuries sustained. And because earlier, as I said, he was in a sword fight with Crystal, and also one thing I didn't really mention is she used a sonic device that was really, really loud. So the paramedics just checked his ears just to make sure there wasn't any damage, and there was not. So after the paramedics looked him over, Officer West calls him over to take his statement. He tells West everything. Leads West to where her Crystal is, and West arrests her. David then turns to his family and Evan. They all apologize to him for just not knowing that this could happen. And especially Evan feels guilty, because as I said, they were living together at the time, and Evan just feels so guilty that he didn't really noticed that well that David was gone. Because he did know that David was gone, because as he called David's parents and said, hey David, it is late. Has he contacted either of you that he where he is? And they both say no. And they eventually called the police and head to Wells Fargo, where you already know what happens. Officer West then comes out with Crystal, with the zip tie still on her. He puts her in the car, and he said to Michelle, O'Connor, and Evan, and that he can give them a ride and help them explain this to anyone. So they all get in the car. They all I'll go home. And before Officer West drives off with Crystal, he gives David his phone number and says, if you ever need anything, and here's my number. Then comes the day of the trial a few weeks later. David is standing with his attorney. Sorry, I need to look because I kind of forgot his name now. I know his name was Tom, but I can't remember his last name. Tom Reed. Tom because like I know a few people named Tom. Reed, R-E-I-D. My cousins and like people on my dad's side of the family are the Reed Burns, so I feel like I wanted to honor them in a way because they've helped me a lot. And Crystal's lawyer is Ben Meyer. Ben because I actually know I have heard of two real life lawyers who are named Ben. Meyer because like didn't really think of a good last name. So anyway, David's basically kind of, I never really write it this way, but he's basically shaking with nervousness just before the trial starts. He used it as the number that Officer West gave him. Calls him and says, "Hey, where you at?" West says, "I'll be there in a few minutes." West has to arrive. David greets him. And then the trial opens up. In the opening statement, Tom introduces himself to the jury. And he said that he and David are here to prove of how abusive Crystal has been to him, and how far she was willing to go in order to do that. Meyer and takes the stand and introduces himself, and he said, "I'm here to prove that my client Crystal is not who she is represented to be by the prosecution." He said that Crystal never meant David any harm, but she wanted to, quote, only teach him the ways of life, to teach him how to defend himself, end quote. Officer West then takes the stand and tells the court everything that dispatch told him, how he found David, and that he brought had his family there with him. What David did after he got out. And then he just asked like what happened, and he's asking what happened, and West just explains in great detail what happened. And after that, Tom thanks Officer West for his time, and it's Myers' turn. He asked Officer West, if my client was there, then why did he tell me she was staying with a friend? West responds saying that she was staying with a friend for a while, until that friend almost found out about her. Because that's when she left, because she knew that she would immediately call the police. After Officer West is done, and he leaves the stand, approaches David, shakes his hand, and David says thank you. And Officer West responds with, "You can call me Jack." And that he would do anything for a friend. Because I feel like I wrote David as the type of person that like almost anyone would want to be friends with. And I feel like that line in particular makes that evident. Because a police officer who David barely even knows, but the officer that saved his life, well, not really saved his life, but like he helped him move forward by finally arresting Crystal for her crimes. The officers who arrested Crystal the first time and then arrived, Officers Hernandez and Bennett. Hernandez and Bennett, I just had those names on my mind, and as with most of my character here, so I just went with it. Hernandez is the first to testify, and he recounts how they were dispatched to the house, what they saw, how the statement that's made by David after he recovered enough, because he didn't fully recover, but he was recovered enough that he could at least speak to him in a good way. And then he also talks with David's parents about what happened, and Connor says that after Crystal stabbed David in the back, literally, Connor tackled her and held her down until they got there. And after all the evidence was given, and Crystal was arrested for her aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, the deadly weapon being the knife, and attempted murder. they were taking her to Polk County Jail. But as I mentioned earlier, she managed to get one of the keys from them, and so she got out of the cuffs and assaulted both of them and escaped. Yeah, and once both of them woke up, Crystal was already long gone. But they put a bolo before her so that for Crystal to lay low, because she knew that there would be too much heat. And now that I mentioned that, I would like to mention that since Peyton did not know about what Crystal had done, he didn't bother to check the news about what had happened, and he didn't know about the bolo either. Officer Bennett then testifies, basically says the same thing. And Tom asked her what was going through your mind, through both of your minds when you got on that scene. Bennett responds that they were both worried about how David but that they had to stay professional. Also, one of them calmed Michelle down, while the other got Connor to get up so they could get Crystal. They then questioned them, and after all the evidence was given, and they arrested her. They then tested the knife, and it had Crystal's fingerprints. Because you can't just rely on what you see, so they needed actual DNA evidence. So those fingerprints on the knife really helped them. Peyton then arrives to the courthouse and said that she knew nothing about what happened until after Crystal left. And Peyton's parents also and they backed that claim up as well. One thing I want to highlight in here is something that Peyton says, and then Crystal's response to that, because it just shows like how far down on the rabbit hole she was about all of this and the devotion she had for all of this. Peyton says, his quote, "She told me she would just wanted to spend time away from her family. I didn't think it would is because she was a fugitive for almost killing her own brother, no less." End quote. Crystal then stands up and yells at her, saying, and I quote, "If it wasn't for my parents, I would have finished the job. I went to you because I knew you were the one, and I thought I could trust. I was enjoying my freedom with you, and you almost ruined it." The judge, Dave Callahan, and then bangs his gavel while yelling at her. Crystal then goes silent, and then Myra pulls her down. Callahan and then tells her, "One more outburst is from you, and I'll end this trial right now." He calms himself and tells Peyton she can go sit. Michelle is then called onto the stand. She said that both Connor and Michelle, both Connor and her knew that Crystal never liked David, but neither of them thought that she would ever escalate to trying to kill him. She then says after David was stabbed, they talked to David. They told him Bennett and Hernandez had made arrangement, and so he could go live somewhere else. Because Crystal did not know where Evan lived, so they chose that location, and so Crystal could not find him. Callahan and thanks Michelle how she leaves the stand. Connor is held up next. He says that both Evan and David had kept in contact with both him and Michelle on a regular basis, and updated them on just how everything was going. He tells them about how Evan called them both, and how he said that David went missing. He said that David hadn't been home for a while, and he hadn't communicated at all, so they were all really worried. Evan is then called to the stand, and he said, as soon as I heard that David had been stabbed by Crystal, I asked David's parents along with mine, and his parents I named John and Angie Rodriguez. In real life, if I already talked to you guys about Michelle, so in real life, if Angie is actually her sister, and John, and in real life it is Angie's his nephew. So Evan asked them if David could come stay with them, because they knew Crystal couldn't find the house. They all agreed. And Evan goes into detail about what happened and how David went out. It was for an errand. But in actuality, he had gotten a call from Crystal who threatened him saying, "Come here or Evan dies." So David had to lie to him in order to protect him. And when David didn't come home, Evan had called the police because he was so worried about what might have happened. the dispatch told him that Evan had called. It was the call that he made after beating Crystal. And an Officer West arrived. He picked Evan up and they went to Michelle and Connor's house to get them. And he recounts basically everything that David said. He hugged he went to the paramedics, all that. Callahan thanks Evan for his time. Evan leaves the stand. And as the trial comes to a close, David is finally called to the stand. He tells them how his relationship with Crystal is never good. And he said, and I quote, "In fact, it was the most horrible relationship I had with anyone," end quote. He then says, without sufficient proof, because there was one time that I did not mention, and that Crystal actually tried to attack David with a knife directly, but David managed to use his knowledge of fencing to counter that attack, and get her on the ground. Told the parents, and they didn't really have any sufficient evidence. It's because David was the only one who actually saw everything, and there wasn't really enough evidence to call the cops yet. So all they could do was just try and make arrangements at the house so that Crystal would not be anywhere near David. However, as you guys know, that did not work at all. He then mentioned after Crystal's escape, he never actually knew who until he went to Wells Fargo, because he never looked close enough at his phone until I get news notifications. So he never knew that Crystal escaped. He tells them that he went into Wells Fargo because his friend was threatened, and he tells them everything that happened there. He tells them that at the time Crystal stabbed him in the back, it left a scar. Meyer then asked David to prove it, and asked him, "Where is the scar?" David asked Judge Callahan if he could lift up his shirt to show the scar, since Meyer asked. Callahan agreed. He showed him the scar. And David also said is something that I personally only came up with just like after a real life event that happened. But I'll read it before I elaborate more. David says, and I quote, "However, even though she did all that, I would like to say that I forgive her for all she's done. I feel that that's why I spared her life after our fight. Because I know that forgiving her will help me move forward. I know that holding on to this resentment I've had for her all these years will do nothing for either of us. And even though she ruined my life, I would like to say I don't wish that on her, no matter how much she has hurt me and my loved ones. She deserves the right to have this trial. I'll be fair to both of us, no matter what she's done." End quote. David then pulls his shirt back down. Callahan says to David that he can leave the stand. Crystal is then called onto the stand, and she denies it all. However, with help from Officer West, as they were able to get the security footage from Wells Fargo, and it showed everything that happened. And if you guys don't know, they had probable cause to search Wells Fargo because of what was happening, and they did not need a warrant because they knew by the time they got the warrant, since Westwood had to get it before going there, but he didn't want to waste time because you never know if someone's dying, and those few minutes getting the warrant could be fatal. So with all that, he did not need a warrant, and so he went there immediately. And after seeing the footage that was recovered, heard by West, Crystal clenches her fist because she just did not see this coming. Callahan says, based on an evidence and show when the defendant was lying in her statement. Excuse me. And he told her, there are certain penalties for lying under oath. Because in an actual law that is called perjury, which can get you a year in prison. Crystal then goes back to her seat. Closing arguments are next. Tom is the first to speak, and I'll read what he says here. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would first like to thank you one final time for taking this case. And I would also like to say that my client asked me to share how thankful he is to everyone involved. If all this was never brought to light, he would have suffered a lot longer than he did. Meyer is the next for the closing argument, and he said, and I quote, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client has had her life ruined, and thanks to this case. Do you really want to ruin someone's life because of a stupid court case?" End quote. She acted on pure immaturity, and all this was a big mistake she made. End quote. So that's it. That's the closing arguments. Callahan turns to the jury and says, "You may leave for deliberation." They deliberate for about 10 minutes, The head juror then said, as after careful deliberation, we, the jury, find the defendant Crystal Meneses guilty of all charges. After a few minutes, Callahan says that he's ready for the verdict. Everyone then stands because, as that's custom, is you're all supposed to stand and when the verdict is being read. Callahan says, in my time presiding over this trial, I've come to realize how interesting it has turned out to be. But I never thought that a case like this would have ever happened. I realize now if someone tries to live with such abuse as that Mr. Meneses has had faced all these years, they have no choice but to try and get away, so they can try to make a new life for themselves. I hereby sentence the defendant, Crystal Meneses, to life if in prison without the possibility of parole. And then he says, may God have mercy on your soul. He bangs his gavel, and after hearing the verdict, David had just sighs in relief because he's just finally free of everything that's happened in all these years. Tom smiles at him. They hug. And after they pull away from each other, David notices Crystal talking with Meyer. She sighs because she knows there's nothing that could help her now. David then gets his thing. He then goes out of the courtroom. He sees his parents and Evan. He puts his things down and hug all three of them. And he says to them, it's over. It's finally over. Crystal is then walks out of the room, and two sheriffs flank her, and they just tell her it's time to go home. She then in his cup and taken outside. But before they leave, David asked them to bring her over. They do. David tells Crystal, I genuinely meant what I said on the stand. I don't resent you for any of this, but I know you don't care. I did that to prove to myself that I was still a good person, even after everything you had done. I spared you because I didn't want to become you. I knew that if I had killed you, even though it would have been in self-defense, I wouldn't be able to live with myself and the fact that I would then have blood on my hands. But I do wish you the best and hope you can eventually see the error of your ways. End quote. He then looks at the sheriff, tells them he's done. They then take her out into the courthouse, because they're already out of the courtroom. Officer West then approaches, says that he called in the favor that David asked to help him in his mission. And he said that he was able to get in contact with the people that David had wanted. Since this takes place in 2024, and he wanted to do it at the United Nations, he got in touch with President Biden and the Secretary General of the United Nations, who is currently Antonio Guterres. They both accepted his offer and said that they would like David to present it to him in a few days, so they can prepare everything for the next General Assembly meeting in about 2 months. West tells him where it'll be, the General Assembly in New York. West then said that he asked them if David could bring people. They said yes. But they also said they don't want it to be crowded on the stage, so they said that they can project it outside so they can all see. And what this gives him one final congratulations. And David responded and saying thank you for it to him saying thank you for everything. And because you, the three have done and more than what it was required of you, and that he's just and that David is just thankful for that. After the three of them leave, David turns back to his parents, Vincent, Evan, and they all leave the courthouse. David then sees Crystal getting loaded into a paddy wagon, which is basically an armored police car. He watches as she's strapped in, and then the doors are closed, and the wagon is surrounded, and they all leave. He then gets in the car with his parents and Evan, and they go home. David asks them, "Can I make dinner?" Or to, mark this occasion. All three of them say yes. So he makes them spaghetti and breadsticks. They pour over their food, and they start eating. After a few minutes, Evan turns to David and says, "Why didn't you call the police once you saw Crystal's threat against me?" David responds his voice shaking, and he says, "I assumed since she threatened you, if I got the police involved, she would have found and killed you. I was also afraid that if I did call them, I know the type of person she is. If she found out what I knew, she would stop at nothing till she found and killed you in front of me." David had then said, as he didn't want to risk losing Evan because of all that, especially not to Crystal. Because Crystal would have made sure, or if that went and through the way that David thought, it would have driven him insane. David then gets tears in his eyes about all this, and Evan and assures him, saying, "Hey, I'm all right, hey, and this is all over." They hug, and David's parents join the hug. He tells them, and I quote, "Thank you guys for everything. You saved me from her. How can I ever repay you?" They all then smile at him. Evan then says, "We all agree that you being safe is all we care about. We don't expect anything from you. All we want for you is to be safe and happy." End quote. Michelle then puts a hand on David's shoulder and said, "As you don't need to repay us, we just want to help whenever we can. We know from you that helping people and not expecting a reward is a gift. If we are not only give to others, but to ourselves as well. The gift of giving and can make, and not only make the person receiving it good, but also it'll make you feel good." David's dad says that they learned it from him. They learned it from David. If you guys were confused. He says to David, "You helped us realize is that we can do a lot for the community. That's why we work so hard. Because as we learned from you that helping the community, no matter how small, can go a long way and make not only others feel good, but the person who is helping them as well." David then blushes because he just doesn't expect all this praise from his parents. After they finish eating, and David puts all their dishes away. David then says that he's heading to bed, and he thanks them one final time. His mom said, "You're welcome, have a good night's sleep." His dad had then said, "Of course, sleep well." Evan then said, "You're welcome, hope you have a good night's sleep." he looks at them one final time, and before going to his room, he decides he wants to listen to music just to like get his mind in the mindset that this was just all worth it in the end. Finally, he being rid of everything Crystal's done to him, and he decides to listen to Shawn Mendes and David Kushner. He listens to David Kushner, her song Daylight first. He chose that song because it shows no one is perfect and that we all have darkness inside us. But all that matters is what we do with it. Do we ignore it and let it grow? Or do we acknowledge it and destroy it before it can grow? See that I mentioned Hans Crystal? He'll say that she ignore the darkness and let it grow inside her. And she held on until all that for her entire life. After David listens to that song for a few minutes, he turns on Wonder by Shawn Mendes. He chose that song because it shows that no one is perfect, and how people just wish someone would love them. In David's case, he just wishes that Crystal would love him because he loves her even after everything she's done. He listens to him for a while before he then goes to bed. He acknowledges all of the good that came out of this. He finally found peace. Crystal's finally out of his life. He has a new friend. Well, 3. The 3 officers that helped him. And knowing that Crystal is finally gone, he knows that she'll never be able to hurt him or his family again. And that he can finally have a normal life without having to look over his shoulder. And that's my story. Sorry that this is a little long. I'm looking at the time right now, and it said this is an hour and 9-minute song. So sorry if this is really long, but I have been really passionate about that story for a while, and I just wanted to, get it out there. So thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you guys later.